Good evening. Thank you for joining us in this week's Harmony Circle. And the topic today is the limitation of my mind. I don't think there's anybody, there's nobody new. I don't need to go over the introduction. And if we are comfortable, like I request, if we can keep our cameras on, great. If not, this is good too. So I will just, display the poem one so that we can go through it and then we can start with the session. I mean, we've already started. So yeah. So I'm assuming that everybody can see the screen. So the topic is limitations of my mind. For as long as I remember, I've been wanting to move beyond. I am trying to reach somewhere big, to lead a good life and do no wrong. Perceiving myself to be sharp and smart, I depend strongly on my mind. I use everything as means to an end. To be big, I strategize, exploit, and design. But the more I look at facts around me, life never is the way I want it to be. My desires for pleasure give me pain. In my struggles, I have somehow gained. As mind is limited, only limited it can see. The big picture, the truth, is way beyond me. Maybe if I can trust the universe and let go, I can merge with the cosmos and join its flow. Limitations of my mind. So I think I don't know, I don't know how much I can verbalize on this, but I feel that now that I have lived a good chunk of my life, like my fruits have started reaping, like kind of my decisions. I can now see what was the result of, my plannings and goals and education and relationships and stuff. And I don't know, if I look back, I kind of see a pattern, like, a pattern that my planning did not really work, a pattern that, what I felt like I wrote in the poem would give me joy was the cause of my, biggest pains, and vice versa. The things when I thought that, oh my God, my world has fallen apart, those moments really made me something more. So, that kind of makes one question that what exactly am I doing? What am I basing my planning or I don't know life on? And is that needed? Like in my cleverness, like my society or my world has taught me that, oh, it's so amazing to be clever, right? Like if somebody has a sharp mind, it's like, wow, that's the way it is. Like, she or he has a sharp mind. But in regular mundane affairs, I can say that, plan, strategize, use your mind. But in general, reflecting back just to see that what has this cleverness of my mind or my planning has given me, so that, moving forward, no matter how much life is left, if I can, I don't know, be without a plan or maybe plan a little more better based on what I have done so far. I don't know, because like totally giving away planning also seems like, maybe you're just doing too much, or maybe it would need more effort, more surrender. So just, kind of just wanted to reflect on that. And, one more thing, like whenever I have done something, if I see, I have been wanting, I've taken things like on a straight line that, okay, I'm here and I have to be here. And these are the steps that I want to, I have to take to be there. But, the more and more I'm walking, I'm realizing that there is no point A to B. I've been kind of moving in circles and I don't really learn. from new things, the same things teach me new things. It's like the depth of the circle keeps on increasing. I kind of keep going inside and I start seeing more the same things that I've been looking at since a number of years. So yeah, I guess for to begin with, probably that would be an introduction I would want to go with. And very curious to know, because yeah, and just one more thing, like I said, I just want to stress on that I've seen that things have been really kind of nonsensical, kind of like what I thought was my cleverness was actually my foolishness. What I thought was my security was what was holding me back. So kind of just realizing this, and by the grace of God, most of the times being able to enjoy that, the funny element in that, oh, oh, I was trying to be clever, see what happened. So it's like, it's fun. And but just trying to see what else, we can get from this. So having said that, I would request that, whoever is ready, whatever they have, I don't know, any sharings or reflections, anything about the poem, the reason they are there. If we can unmute and share, please, let's start with the circle. Thank you. Shilpi, you have unmuted. Would you want to go first?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to request you to share maybe one or two examples of what your realization about being clever and then that cleverness sort of like backfiring. And in the whole process, you're learning a lesson. But I think maybe somebody can share, and at some point, you can share some examples.
Yeah, so whenever we find a pause, thank you for putting me on the spot. Not that I am not on the spot already, but yeah, I'll definitely share. So if anybody wants to go, yeah, unmute and please start. It'll be nice to have different angles to this.
I seem to be ever ready to go ahead.
And that's really nice. Thank you, Swati, and happy to see you here after a lot of time. Yeah.
Happy to be here. It's a good. I mean, I was just telling my husband that I've been so much in this whole move thing. So it would be nice to sit back and reflect. Um, yeah, what you were sharing, something from what you said, you plan certain things, and sometimes those things, obviously, many times those things don't pan out. And I just wanted to reflect on that part, that irrespective of whether things pan out or not, one is, of course, that I think we jump on to the next desire or the next thing. Even when the things do pan out, we don't really register that. I think we register more of things that don't pan out. And even if things do pan out, uh, eventually I feel like, yeah, things have panned out, but that does not make me more happier or anything like that. I mean, uh, I mean, it's a tangent maybe, but in terms of the limitation of the mind, it's also another limitation where we think that acquiring something or achieving something or something external of any form can give me peace, or whatever we are seeking, happiness, joy. And so that's an inner state at the end of the day, irrespective of what you have been able to achieve or anything. I mean, if even if things are panning out just the way you'd like them to, if you don't have the right state of mind or right attitude, inner attitude, then so that's, I think that also comes in the perspective of what the mind starts thinking, oh, what should I do? What should I do next? What should I do next? I think that's one. And then the perception, the limitation of perception was one more thing, that uh, the inability to perceive what its own limitations. And you know I don't know if this is making enough sense from what you spoke to. And speaking from what is real for me for the limitation of mind per se. uh, yeah, so that's one thing. And another experience is that you see patterns. The mind is very adept at making you see what you want to see. So confirmation bias, I mean, you kind of, so there are many such things that have repeatedly come forward in terms of the limitations, and I feel that uh, there needs to be a distance somewhat from the mind overall, you know, because what you reflected on was just one, perhaps one aspect. I may not have read all the aspects in it, but I'm sure they're there embedded, you know, because whether it's the actual intelligence or the perception or other issues, but when you step back and look at it, it's it the mind thinks that it's its job to sort things out and do something, versus stepping back from the mind and saying that, hey, it's, you know, yeah, maybe not exactly your job. So yeah, because we kind of automatically think that it's the mind's job to fix things.
So, Swati, are you referring to mind sort of as a limited tool for perception, and hence whatever analysis the mind is giving me, whatever insights it's giving me, are also hence limited? Is that sort of where you are indicating?
Partly, see, I think it's not a very clear demarcation that I may be able to make, and this is also it's getting clearer. It's not a clearly formed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously it's been spoken about by people, so there would be that reflection that can always be gone into. But the thinking mind has it is a tool at the end of the day, you know, but what happens is we get identified with every thought that comes out of the mind, and every, you know, every perception is being considered as it, that's it, you know. So then we are functioning from that level, and we are functioning from a limited level, therefore. To the extent that we are identified and we think that every thought that comes is, you know, to be listened to and to be identified with, and every impulse and every, that's what, so from the physical, mental, vital, whatever, everything that comes from these through the mind, and everything that we relate to, unless we step back and look at it, and I try to discern, okay, this is maybe we've gone on a tangent. I don't know if Taru, you want to pull us back to specifically what you want to discuss. But I was just thinking that, yeah, at the end of the day, the distance from the thinking mind would be, yeah, something to also think about.
Yeah, Swati, first of all, there's never anything that I would want to restrict you to something, and these are something beautiful, right? Like the things that come out, because of course, I also have a limited possession of things. So when I hear reflections or different tangents, that's like progressive for me too. So never have to say this that, but while you guys were sharing, it's so interesting. What I've read, what was coming to me was that probably say, I don't know, if there's a knife and it's a butter knife, and I am trying to cut, like really refine things with it, it would not happen. But that doesn't mean that the butter knife doesn't serve a purpose. So, mind has a purpose. It helps us clarify certain things and stuff, but I use it everywhere because I've been told that, or I don't know, told, or this is my assumption that mind will take me everywhere. So I think that was what was coming to me right now, that, kind of there is a truth beyond our cleverness. There is a truth beyond our planning. And by beyond, I don't mean that it's beyond me, but it's beyond my perception, like you were saying, the perception. So it's just very interesting. And Shilpi, to answer your question, not a specific example, but I was reminded of why I chose the topic this time. So that would kind of answer your question as well. I was listening to a discourse with my father the other day, and it said something which I've heard before, but this time it just, I don't know, clicked something inside, something turned, that the person said that there was this guru and there was this disciple, and the disciple asked the guru, how do I become the Brahm? Like, how do I know I'm Brahm, or how do I become Brahm? And he said that just drop all desires and you are it. And it's not something new, right? We have heard it so many times, but I don't know, it hit something so hard inside that for me, my moksha or my lightness or my, I don't know, whatever it is that I want to achieve in life are all desires that, oh, I wish I don't get angry. Oh, I desire that, that I'm just sitting like this. And if even if there are, 5,000 people talking, it doesn't bother me. So everything about me, because I'm so used to achieving everything with desires, using my mind, and what the guy talking, I mean, I think he was discussing Upanishads. What he was saying is that once I drop this desire of achieving, so it was very kind of like opposite of what I just felt, that oh my god, like, okay, I have made this onto a desire and I will get it when it's no more a desire. So that was that, I don't know, that opposite thing that I was referring to. It just, I don't know if I've been able to explain it, but it was beautiful for me to realize that I'm again, trying to be clever. I have to be, so that was the basic thing. So, yeah, again, spoken too much. Anybody else? Yeah, Swati.
Just want to add to what you said. Anthony de Mello puts it really beautifully. He says, when the heart is unobstructed, the result is love. When the sight is, you should listen to the talk, of course, but uh, so it is the dropping of, there are these perceptions or all of these things. When all of these are dropped, then whether it is seeing, truly knowing, all of that is the result.
Yeah.
Hi, Dharu. Hi, everyone. I just had one clarification before we continue. So when we talk about mind, what we are referring to, is it the brain? Is it the consciousness? Is it the thought? Is it your body? What we are referring to, or we are still figuring out when we say what mind is?
I think for me, Mayur, it would be a lot of things that you said, right? Like my process of thinking, my thoughts, my plannings as to this is where I have to be, need to be, should be. So all those things I would call as mine, like the thing that I use mostly to guide myself, my guiding light. Like it should be, I don't know, something divine, but I use my own mind to reach places where the mind can't go. So I am sorry, I'm just repeating myself, but yeah, that's what I would refer to as mind.
Okay.
So anyone else who would want to? Yes, Shilpi.
No, I was just wondering, I wanted to ask Mayur what his understanding of mind was, because yes, everybody can have their own. It's a very broad, all encompassing word.
Hi. For me, mind doesn't exist. Uh, I'm when I think with respect to a bigger picture, I do not consider myself as an entity, and I do not feel I need to define myself with mind or body or anything. So yeah, it's for me, it doesn't exist. Sorry.
Mayur, that's a very interesting definition. Could you talk a bit on more on that? I mean, I would be very curious to know that somebody saying that for me the mind does not exist.
So I've been like, yeah, like from our childhood we have been told, or we listen to other people and other intellectual beings and spiritual beings, religious being, that mind is something bigger than you. It is all power, etc. But after experience, my personal experiences, is just that you have an energy that you can connect to, and that's it. Taru, you are on mute.
How do you connect with that energy, like personally for yourself?
Personally for myself is, you can say, by focusing, by meditating, or it can be anything. For anyone it can be a walk, listening to music, etc. But for me it's meditation.
Okay. Okay. Swati, I think, did you unmute? I thought you did. I'm not sure. Maybe not. Yeah.
No, there's some network issue at my end.
Okay.
No, there was some network issue at my end, so I just got logged out.
Okay. Okay. So that was very interesting for me. And anyone else who would want to share right now? There's a quote, I think, from Rumi. I'm not sure, but it says, protect yourself from your own thoughts. And what Mayur said, I mean, if it's possible that you don't use your mind, you just connect to the energies. I mean, if it's possible, it sounds quite divine. Yeah.
I had a question. If there's no mind, how does the person think? He thinks with his energy. How does he think? How does he formulate the thoughts? There has to be some source for it, or some.
So just Josna ji, sorry to interrupt. So when we say thoughts are just about ideas that are inbuilt to you by any means. For example, by the five senses you have, you build up something there in your brain. Then you have those thoughts with respect to what you have experienced in life, either through yourself or through someone else. So these are just, when we say thoughts, it's the experience that you have done with the five senses, to be just be simply put it.
So if you just take a limb, okay, and you want to pick up something, and you don't use your mind to pick it up, which energy picks it up? A mechanical movement, you would say. Those movements are very, very limited, and they don't have thoughts. Like they say that we do a lot of movements at spinal level, where the body just can trigger physical movement without the use of the brain or the mind or your mental faculties. But those are not monitored, they are erratic, and they do not generate any conclusion, is what I am. But this is just going on in my mind, that how does a person formulate something or give it shape, anything, if there's no mind? If only energy operates, then you cut off the head, and at spinal level only energy should operate, and it should work. Or you just, like, say you have an amputated hand, it has energy, and there is no operation or connection of the mind to it. Will it move?
If Josna ji, you are referring to an earthly level, that of course we need our brain to connect everything. Uh, if you're just referring to the body structure, then of course if you amputate someone's hand, it will be lying there, it will get dissolved and it won't work. It's just that if my idea, it was, or not the idea, what I was referring was more on a macro level. You can refer macro or micro based on what you think about those aspects. So on a macro level, let's say you need daily living chores and something like that, but on a micro level, it's just that you connect with those energy and you do not. So for example, when we go in a sleep, we do not feel that we have a body, right? It's just not there. We cannot know, but it's just that when we are back to our senses, we realize that we have all these things around us.
Yeah, and what I heard from Mayur was like that when he has to make any decision or anything big, rather than using his mind, he connects with the, I don't know, energies or higher consciousness, and that's how he is guided. That's, I don't know, at least that's what I heard. So I think, like he said, he was not talking about mundane things, but like, the big decisions of, I don't know, life or spirituality.
If you go towards spirituality, wouldn't the psychic be functioning there?
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, the I mean, then of course it is said that you move away from the mental plane and you move away from the emotional vital plane and you go towards the psychic which performs. Like even when you're in sleep and you do not realize the existence of your body, but you're relying on something. And what is that something? It's the psychic being which is active in you. That is at the spiritual level, agreed. But somewhere without a mind, how does I'm thinking aloud, how does a human being function?
Yeah, so like he said, for the regular stuff, like the mind is there, right? Like I also said that for basic things, for this, for our basic daily living, right? The mind is there and we use it. But the question was that for the big things, where my life is going, why am I born, how do I, get where I want to get? I mean, if it's just materialistic gains, probably the mind would be able to help or steer me. But if I am looking for something bigger, then like I thought Mayur said that the mind, he according to him, does not exist for him there. He does
Then they
use.
say that you need to silence the mind more than anything else.
Yeah. So I
The
think that's
mind
the
will
way
keep
of
on
saying I
saying,
don't use it, right? Like I kind of, like they say, kind of there's a terminology, uh, learned ignorance, that things are coming, but you just don't want them, so you just ignore them, right? So probably something like this. So
yeah, something to that effect.
yeah, yeah. So Jasmine has typed something. Jasmine, would you like to just speak, or there's too much? You can't talk. Okay. So Jasmine is saying, I feel what Mayur is talking about is an experiential thing. The mind is limited to articulate the experience in words and restrict to materialistic world. Yeah. So I think moving on, Josna ji, why don't you share about just what you resonate about the topic or anything in, I mean, I'm sure you would have experiences as well. They would have personally felt
I'll
the
listen a while to what the others say and then I'll give an input definitely. I was a little curious to know from which plane Mayur was speaking. So just to get an idea of what he meant, I interrupted. Otherwise, I would have probably waited till the end.
I think, Jyotsna ji, would there be a difference between brain and mind? Because mind, which I think Mayur was referring to, was at a different level, and brain is what functionally we use for daily, like actions or voluntary body movements and all. So, if we have to talk about mind, wouldn't it be like a larger plane? I'm not sure if mind and brain are same, because mind is, I think, more of in our entire body, and I feel it's the like Mayur said, energy and information, that flows between two people or environment. That is mind to me. Like it's much more than the brain.
Would the mind be the mental plane?
Yes, it would be a play. It's not brain where from where my like body actions come, or it's very the reflex actions come. That I don't think it's that. For me, mind is more of yeah, it's a plane where I interact with myself, I process, and I also interact my environment, and there is definitely an energy flow. That is what I feel my mind is like. There is an energy flow between whoever is there, or the environment, and me. That is mind for me.
That's a mental plane, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I wanted to share something here. Like I feel that one easy way to look at it also, which I personally also do that, is to look at it as a functional mind and another mind. The functional mind is what we have been talking about, the one controlling the bodily functions, and one that is required if I am reading something, the one, all of that. But the other mind, which wherein lies my, I'm personally speaking, wherein lies my problem, is the mind which I would call the suffering mind, and the mind that wants to be happy, and the one that has this strong sense of identity, of preferences, of wants, not wants, commenting about everything, the constant narration in the head. So that kind of encompassing thing, which gives me sort of a sense of me in this world. And that therein, for me personally, I feel that therein lies my suffering, and it gives me happiness. Sometimes it dangles a carrot in front of my head, and I kind of run towards the next desire, towards the next happiness. And I find that in longer run, I don't kind of get what I want. So this collection of sort of personality traits that are constantly being narrated or constantly being showcased in my experience, that is what I personally call the mind, the one that's kind of a problem for me. And that is the one that I feel that I'm on a quest to understand better, because yeah, that is what leads for me to go beyond it, as Taru said, no limitations of the mind. And once we understand what it is and why it is, that kind of paves the way to go beyond the limitations of the mind. So I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, this is really interesting to know how we define the mind. Yeah, anyone else who would want to, thank you, Shilpi, unmute and share, like maybe just their definition of mind. Yes, Vas.
Hi, everyone. Just wondering if mind is as a conscious thinking, thinks consciously, more of like probably giving us the feelings and emotions, maybe. And this is just adding to what maybe what is brain and what is mind we were talking about just now. So my brain is more technical, I guess. So more like an organ thing, and the mind is probably what makes us feel the feelings and think the thoughts consciously or unconsciously, is how I am. I don't know. This is just my perception.
Yeah, so
And
the thing that helps me perceive, sorry, I thought you were done. Please, yes. And
I think that's what I'm thinking. And also when the topic of limitations of mind came in, I also thought about how we limit our, about anything, ourselves, the mind. For example, if I am calling somebody and or texted somebody and I wait for a response and they don't, So immediately the first thing the mind comes to our mind, to my mind, is that, oh, see, it's a immediate response, like, why did not I get a call back, or why did I not get a text reply? And from it goes from worry to anxiety to start thinking that, oh, they don't have the time, I'm giving this time. So to me, limitation of mind, I thought, was more when we limit ourselves to a certain way of looking at things. This is a basic example I've given of a phone call, or a text message responses. But from there, I think we use our mind or not use our mind properly. I think only then we get into all the suffering mode and all that. It starts giving us all kinds of ideas and thoughts, and that's what I thought limitation of mind, according to me, I thought was more into that. And how you introduced Taru, I thought I kind of resonated a lot to what you said. We think that we're very clever in thinking certain things for the future, and then when we are in that future, when we thought about those clever decisions and we realize, okay, they were not that clever. I kind of resonated with what you said, and I think you put in all those words like very nicely. So yeah, that's what, mm, my perception of today's topic.
Yes, thank you so much. I really liked, what I think what you were implying were we misuse the mind, right? We're supposed to like
Yeah.
use it towards something, but
Right.
we do, like with your example as well. Yes, Shweta, please.
Yeah, so yeah, taking it forward again, I'm stuck with brain and mind. So I feel mind again, like from what Vas said and from what Shilpi said, I feel when you're talking about the suffering mind, again, it takes me to a relation. So mind can't be, like be equal to like brain. I feel it is the difference between individual and collective, and mind is definitely collective and relational, and it doesn't exist only in us. A mind is so relative that my suffering and everything, if I'm talking about mind, it is related to my environment, my relationships, and it is about collective. It is about, again, oneness, and that is why mind, I feel.
So the tool that helps me perceive everything, and personally for me, like apart from the functional mind, like thank you Shilpi for that term. For me, mind is like the one who always says, I know. I know how we got here. I know where we have to go. I know what's working. I know what that phone call meant. So that I know, for me, very simply put, because somehow we tend to get, even lost in the definitions, but simply speaking, just the one that says I know. And the question is, did I know or do I know? So yeah, the one that doesn't let me have like that, full faith, because it says that how can you let, I know so much, how can I just, I don't know, not be. And this reminds me of a very funny example that the first time, I'd heard that sentence that says, from Sri Aurobindo, that let thy will be done and not mine. So I was absolutely fine with the first part of it, that let thy will be done. But when I had to probably say, or even kind of, I don't know, just reflect on it, the and not mine, I felt, oh, that's so wrong. If what they want is what I want, kind of like it took me 2-3 days to clear that thing for me, that there's something in me which just doesn't want to agree to this, to say it so loudly, that let thy will be done and not mine, because according to my logic, let thy will be done was enough. So why did Sri Aurobindo had to add and not mine? So then again, for me, that was that the trick of the mind or the ego. But why to go there? Why, what's the use? So yeah. So anyone else, please, who haven't shared, don't want to take names, if they would like to say anything about, I don't know, mind definitions or the limitations, the topic, anything, please unmute and share. This is a great time to do that. Ritu has typed something. Ritu, you can't talk today. There's some like noise at your end.
No, I can.
Then
So,
please do.
yeah. So I'm just wondering whether mind and ego are the same, or mind is bigger and ego is a sub part of it, and mind should try and kind of control the ego, or it's ego which controls everything.
Why? I mean, of course, we can delve into this, but what? How would this help us? Just out of curiosity, I'm asking. Like these distinctions.
Sounds a bit positive also, like maybe our mind will show us the right way. Like even what Mayur said, that it's something, there's no mind, something divine is there. So even this thought is coming from the mind, isn't it? I mean, where is that thought originating from, like Jyotsna ji was asking? So I mean, just even thinking that there is nothing like the mind, that's difficult to kind of, um accept or just digest, or I mean, so it's actually a very I mean, broad definition of what mind is.
And it's
And
so beautiful that somebody can actually say that, right? Like there is no mind. Because my mind, when I hear it, it's so strongly kind of, stands up to it. Sorry, please continue.
yeah, and in Hindi, if we talk about it, like we say Sthul Sharir, Suksham Sharir, and Karan Sharir. So in the Suksham Sharir, like Sthul Sharir is the day or the body, and Suksham Sharir is Man, Buddhi, Chit, Ahankar. So I think mind is this Buddhi, Chit, and Ahankar. I mean, if we just try and, since we are talking about it.
Yeah, Swati, yes, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's, I mean, I haven't, I think for my own personal reason, delved too much into it. For some reason, I don't know. It's not much of not enough interest to me, maybe. I don't know why. But I think from Sri Aurobindo's definitions, there are multiple different planes, like the mental plane, but there is an intellectual mind, there's an intuitive mind, there are different aspects to the mind. And ego is just a part, as in a part which is
I can't hear anything. I
He's
think
having network problems, I think.
yeah. Swati, we can't hear you. It kind of stopped in between.
sorry, there was some network issue. But yeah, I'm just saying, to delve into this, it would be really interesting if somebody else knows, please. But like you said, the buddhi, chit, in all these aspects, all these different aspects is mind. So it's and we function from very much function from. I mean, it is a very important tool, um, and yeah, we that's what. So there's nothing. I personally wouldn't feel even I understand where the discomfort from no mind thing comes from. I kind of relate to it. If you can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, I think she got disconnected.
I would tend to agree with her that we do operate from various planes, which are pretty well defined in Sri Aurobindo's yoga. And he says that as you progress, one does tend to understand the limitations and the requirements of each plane for our growth, till finally you go to the supramental, and what he says, when divinity will be brought on earth, when we will not need the mind to think, we will go above it. To reach that state or that level will mean bringing universal divinity on earth. You know, universally, we all will have to be able to imbibe that energy and transmit it to each other, which probably is, I don't know how many eons away. But they gave us a surety because there was an experience within them of it. It is something that we must strive to reach by silencing the mind. You try to silence it, you try to, you don't curb your vital, you try to silence it where it is not required. Whereas for the impetus for doing something, the vital is essential. For the way to perform or do something, the mind is important, it's required. But to what level should it be allowed to go wild is where the question comes. We let it gallop, but to an extent. And after that, we have to know that now, buddy, calm down. I have another job to take ahead, and then we go ahead. So I would tend to agree with Swati.
Thank you,
I hope
Jyot.
she's come back.
Yeah, Swati, please.
Sorry, sorry for my network issues, but you've put it very, in a much, much better way than I could have expressed. But yeah, I basically want to say that everything has its own function, an important function. Just, I think problem arises when we don't understand the limitations, or we don't understand what that tool is for. Like you said, using the butter knife and expecting to cut things in, in very fine and very well defined ways, that would be it would be a waste of a tool. The mind is a very good tool for what it's meant to be for, and as long as we understand, and it's but the journey to understanding its limitation is a very good one for me. It's been because there's so much that you realize in that process. Enough has been written about it, but there is like someone said that from not receiving a response to a text to getting anxious about and running in that direction. So there are these, whether it's the reptile brain or the monkey brain, or basically everything that we have had, which is within us, and we at different points respond from any of those, depending on how grounded or how centered we are, or how actively, that's what how loose the reins are, and how far we let the mind gallop. So it's an interesting journey to kind of, if we can keep stepping back and to silence it and to see, and then to look for the truth, to look for, is what my mind saying really true? And then I think more often than not, we realize that, okay, no, this fear is baseless. No, this confidence may be not rooted in reality. It could be anything, but as long as we step back and seek the truth, then we'll see we'll see where the mind can. Then we can try to not let the mind fool us too much. Maybe we'll succeed in that.
Yes, Swati, thank you. So that was a very important thing, that it is useful, like both Jyotsna ji and Swati were saying, that to reach a point, it's very useful, and then there is a limitation, and even the opposite is true, right? Like there are limitations of the mind, and the mind put limitations on us, right? Like it tells us, okay, this is what I can do, this is the maximum. Again, Shilpi, you'd asked me for an example. There was this, I was having some, I don't know, issues with somebody, and we sat together and we were talking, and I saw that in me that I would, according to me, I was going a bit above my capacity to handle that situation that ways. And I was very strictly kind of telling myself very sure, with a lot of surety, that this is it. This is the maximum I can go. This is my limit. Beyond this, I'm not capable. And neither do I want to, because I know I'm not capable. So there again, it had struck me that how my mind put limits, right? Like at times when I'm, say, talking to my father, he's like that, till a certain age, one can have, very strong will, and one can change ways. But after a certain age, it's not possible. Again, the mind limiting our possibilities, that no, now it's not possible. So this is very important, that how mind has limitations and how mind limits us. And Ritu, for me, like you had asked, like man, buddhi, chit, ahankar. So Chit would be consciousness, according to me. Man is separate. So for me, when I was kind of, sitting on it, and I'm obviously not saying that would be right, but for me, the buddhi aspect, again, that I know was mainly what I was kind of referring to, that it's considered really superior, and yet, it's not served me very well. Of course, it has served me very well as well in areas where it could serve me, but there are certain things and bigger things that I've been wanting, in which I can see that it has no idea what it's doing. It's just trying to, be somewhere where it does not belong, or take me somewhere where it doesn't itself know how to go. So that was my thing.
Yeah, so basically the example you gave of butter knife, that's quite true for the mind. I think it has its own limitation, but it has its own purpose.
Yeah. So why don't you also like talk about the basic topic as well, like in addition to the definition of mind that you started? I mean, you mentioned.
As of now, I'm just enjoying listening.
No, but when you read the text, did you have any like any thoughts or anything that you would want to share? On okay, if you don't want to, that's
Whenever you write, it seems like Shruti, as if it's coming from, I mean, as if you're not writing it, as if it's something universal. So every word resonates, and what you've written, especially at the end of it, is quite true. I mean, that maybe if I can trust the universe and let go, I can merge with the cosmos and join its flow. It's such a beautiful line, a statement to make, but then doing it is really, really, really hard. I mean, every day, sometimes we are kind of fighting against our own self that we have to do this, but then in a natural flow of way, because we are streamlined while growing up to use our mind, to use our brain, to think in a particular manner, we automatically tend to put ourselves in patterns and, like just a train track. So we automatically start moving on that track instead of just, being free and being more explorative. So it's beautiful, but very, very difficult that we don't know how to let go. But even if you do it for a few moments during the day, you feel really good about it. Just letting go, just taking the load off, just telling yourself you're free, you don't have to think about anything, you don't have to keep on using your mind for each and every small little thing. So that's a really good feeling, but then the mind keeps interfering. Yeah.
yes. Thank you. Snehi, you have typed something. Is it possible for you to read it, or you're not in that environment where you can unmute?
Yeah. I would just share my personal experience with regard to the topic. Um, this quote actually resonated with me a lot because a very large part of my life up until now has been about being very, very hard on myself and judging myself all the time. Like, I never aspired to study at the most renowned college because I thought that I would not be able to make it to that college without even trying. And today, when I look back, I realized that I was putting limitations on myself all along the way. Um, and there's this very beautiful word that I try to hold on to. It's called curiosity. Because I think as we grow older, we become more and more rigid about things. And like, I think right now I'm feeling a little stuck professionally and personally. And on one hand, I could get like very bogged down by this feeling, it could cripple me. And on the other hand, I could also try to be curious, to just see where um, this could take me, where life could take me, if I just continue to make honest and brave choices every day and not overthink, because there's a fine line between thinking and overthinking. I think I would. So I'm just trying to be curious um, and I wish in ABC they taught us C is equal to curiosity and not necessarily cat. Yeah.
That's so nice. Yeah, Snehi, thank you. And I want to say this, and since you are on, like right now, I'm seeing you after a long time. There were three people who, over the past weeks, when you were in the session, they, later on asked me that why doesn't Snehi share? We love her sharings. So just wanted to let you know because, again, the beauty is that everything here is so lived and it really adds a different dimension. And it's really nice that why should I restrict myself, and curiosity is so beautiful. And again, it reminded me of a few quotes that I think it was again Rumi, or I don't know, Hafiz, who said that I am in you and uh, you are in me, or I am in you and I am you. No one would understand it unless they have lost their mind. That oneness that we talk about, having that mind as a wall around me. Like, of course, there's this body, the physical body, and yet there is this mental mind that. And again, there was another quote where it said that I would rather have my mind opened by wonder than be closed by belief, right? Because whenever I, like you shared, like when you said I can't get there. So I mean, for me, I feel that after being open, and especially after I got this bug of self love, I don't know, I have met so many people within me who I didn't know lived in me. Like, say the one probably who writes these poems, like I didn't know he exists, she existed. So kind of a thing, they say that there's a painter that exists in you which you don't know about. So again, having that curiosity, that wonder, and that possibility that yes, everything is possible is really beautiful. And it's really kind of, I don't know, this, it's as if the, like the world is trying to limit me, and there's something in which, in me which says that I'm sorry, I cannot be changed. So I think Jyotsna ji also would like probably add. I mean, she has learned painting recently, in case she wants to say anything here.
There are many facets within oneself which one doesn't know, or is, it's not about not knowing, it's that which one is not aware of, and what one is capable of. And one has so many facets to that so-called one personality which you think you know, but you realize that every day a new facet unfolds and something else comes out. It is definitely very fascinating to observe what a human mind is capable of. I was just speaking for myself, I was seeing something that Mother from the Aurobindo Ashram has said. And she says, at times one gets the impression that the mind in reality is the most formidable illusion in the world. And she nods her head and she says that that's what veils the true world. According to what I see now, it seems to me that the mind has been the instrument needed to make the transition from unconsciousness to consciousness. That is, to make this matter, matter as in matter, capable of receiving consciousness. But it will slowly be either transformed or it will be eliminated. And the same thing applies with vital also, which is not relevant to these subjects. So there is an experience, Sri Aurobindo had constantly said, there is an intelligence highly superior to the mind, which has nothing to do with the mind, an intelligence of things. And that's why he called his new creation supramental. He always used to describe it as a perfect understanding of things. That was what I was trying to say at that time, but I couldn't recall rather where I had read it, and I found it. So it does make sense that what he says, the supramental is going beyond the mental plane.
Yes, thank you, Jyotsna. Swati has typed something. I'll read it out because of a network issues. Swati says that I had.
Taru, I have just shared these quotes, especially from what you were speaking about the difficulties of following this path. These are very special to me, the quotes, because this is where these are by Sri Aurobindo, where he talks about the fact that, you think that this was easy or, is meant for the path. And then if you think that that's the case, then you do disservice to this whole integral yoga that I have established. I mean, I wouldn't be able to put it in the way he has with everyone. Then maybe you can, maybe I can put them later in the group. But essentially, they're talking about that it's, when we talk about it being difficult and not possible, so quite often that comes up. And reading this kind of, you see it differently. I don't know. It certainly did for me when I read it, because it felt like, yeah, obviously it's, yeah, we'll get where we get, but the point is that if we begin with a back foot, that be of much service to us at all. So, yeah, it helps with my faith.
Yeah, thank you, Swati. So Swati will share this in the group. So then I'll request, I don't know, Reggie, if you are okay sharing, maybe you can share right now. Reggie, in case you're speaking, I can't hear anything. Reggie, you might want to, I think, log.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
You can? Sorry, some network thing's been going on, so good it's come back on time, I think. No, I was just, this conversation has gone into such a different dimension. So what I was quote unquote thinking, so mundane, so I was just wondering what to say, actually, because, the thing is, and out of reading Sri Aurobindo, the mother's work and other things as well, ultimately, I'm trying to work at it in my own life. So I'm here for a purpose in this physical manifestation. So I have to basically just understand my psychological conditioning that disrupts this path, because there's a path and I'm just on it. And I need not let my puny intelligence come in that way, because what the complexity of this cosmic confluence is too much for it. So it's better to focus on what is rather than focusing on what's beyond. And my focus right now is the inability to handle my thoughts and emotions properly, because trying to prevent them is not a solution, but it's normal to kind of face them, because it's all a part of the experience that I can't avoid. And I just have to understand what needs to be transformed and what needs to be rejected. And for that, I've made this into like a game instead of, because I used to be somebody who's very intense. And I look at my mind as a playground now. I don't shun it. I don't reject it. I don't say it's beyond mind or anything. I just look at it as a game, and I keep stepping back as much as I can, use breath and silence, and kind of just but also not reject the mind itself, which is an instrument. And it's just like practicing any other thing where I learn that process. It's a constant learning, so it just gets better over time. Like many people had mentioned, there is a need to create a space, obviously, and that constant need to create a space. But there are only two broad problems that come with me and even the environments that I've been in, which is people take life too seriously, and they take these other questions also very seriously. And the more I do, the more further away I drift away from joy and happiness. Because the more questions I ask and the more I take life seriously, it just invites misery, chatter, and chaos. So there is a realization that I'm just a slave of my mind, and that is my limitation, which often comes to somebody else's judgments and perceptions, which creates a box of mental constructs, which is as transient and superficial as the mental construct of the mind itself, like we were discussing, is just a construct of energy. I grew up as a very intense person, very, very intense. I hardly, everything was intense around. And now this just the act of subtly smiling at things, at the reactions that I make through the day or mundane activities, it makes the mundane activities fun. Actually, there's a joy that comes when you just calm down. And even the restrictions and challenges always opens doors for new challenges, because the challenge is what makes the joy in everyday life and this mind useful. You see how useful, and it opens up instead of just this random entity. I don't buy it there, etc. Use it because you need it actually in this journey. Whether I don't know whether it's sort of an intermixture of energy, physical matter, and consciousness. But broadly, it's a tool to make my life more heaven on earth than the hellhole it has made, previously, especially. It's a tool and a receptacle to receive from the source of this all-pervasive consciousness. To be honest, if I can't create real peace, joy, and happiness on this material plane, I really can't hope to receive any beauty in an afterlife or some sheltering myself in a psychic beyond the body. This is so advanced. Like, where am I right now? Where am I? If I can't even go through this life that I have been gifted with joy, and if I can't be really sure if I'm capable of going through this material phase of existence, I have no clue about that joy actually, if I can't create it here. That's not true. The truth is that I'm here in a physically manifested form, and I have to keep reminding myself that I'm not really suffering life, but I'm suffering the two most powerful faculties that the divine has given me, my own intelligence and my own imagination. So the more active I am in the world, while being poised within, the more my mind is inevitably living experience and growing in consciousness, which is going towards a non-fixated destination, which I must travel to in this integrated body. and which mind and body are the potent weapons or vehicle that has been gifted with. So so this life is obviously more than a state of mind, but it is the quality of life that I live that matters through the use of this, which is eventually going to decide how happy I am, whether it's in this life or beyond, because I'm here for a very distinct reason, which is revealing itself. So I have to respect all aspects there. And that, in a nutshell, like just how I see it as it is at this moment. So, yeah.
Reggie, may I really laugh out loud? Gosh, the intensity, I heard it all. And then you said you were an intense person earlier.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I can't even explain that more.
Yeah, but I was saying, oh boy, how did you look at yourself when you were intense? This is the lighter form.
Yeah, this is the joy
Wow.
light. Yeah. I came to Monica's group circles after I became, like, I stepped out of that zone. It was too much intensity. I was going by 5 years every year, I think. It was really intense.
Yeah, so I'm glad I'm meeting you after that intense phase. I don't
I'm
know.
glad to be here.
I mean, very well put, of course, and I could relate to all of it, but I could sense the intensity through it.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah.
I try. It's been too intense to word sometimes. The past.
Yeah. Okay. I know you put it extremely well. Just that, okay, this is a lighter form. I'm just laughing about that, but
yeah, I laugh too.
Yeah.
I think that's the only solution.
I know.
I don't have any
Yeah,
solution.
absolutely. No, absolutely. And I can totally relate with it because obviously I have taken myself seriously a long time to come to a point where I can laugh about things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
true that. Completely, I'm with you on that. Takes a while.
Yeah.
Very well said, Reggie. Very well said.
Thank you.
And like Swati said, pretty intense, I would say. You went bang on.
Yeah, it is intense. So I try to encapsulate it in a form that can,
appears not intense.
Yeah, it's it's quite it's quite scary when it's intense, but now I realize that intensity is what brings the beauty. So that is a blessing in a sense. So it's a dichotomy that I live with. It's nice.
Beautiful, Reggie. I mean, just the flow and the clarity of your thoughts, yeah, totally resonate. But like could have never put it like that. Very beautiful. I think we all could relate to it. Very, very beautiful.
Thank you, Shweta. Thank you. You shared quite a bit today. So I'm also being enlightened actually listening to everybody. Especially today's conversation is beyond the mind. So it's very esoteric, but nice. Put me in a zone as well.
I don't know if there should be more words for you, Reggie, after this, because I think there's already been enough praise. But I would want to say that I've read your texts, like your emails and stuff, and I hear you talk, and sometimes I have a feeling that you kind of, like, I don't know, express like Sri Aurobindo. Like, sometimes when I hear him or read him, I'm like, what just happened? Like, it takes me a bit of gap to catch on, and then you see the beauty and stuff. So that was, nice. Yeah.
To be honest, maybe it's the force, because it's only after I read him did I start expressing anything. I never could express at least these aspects. Maybe there's a force, because that's not the first time I heard that. Maybe it kind of triggered it after and it wasn't text actually. That's the great part. It was when my mind was so chaotic. So in this intensity, I went to the ashram. I sat just in the energy, that aura. That's it. I sat there for hours and days, and it was more opening. than contextual intellect and all of these things. It helps me speak, yes, or talk about this, but honestly, silence is the gift, and receptivity is also the gift, which leads to this openness. That's the only truth to everyday life.
Yep.
Thank you.
And really liked what, yes,
No,
Shweta.
I just wanted to thank him for sharing this. This is like really a very good insight. Yeah.
You're welcome. It always works. You do it sincerely.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, what Reggie, you basically said about not shunning the mind and using it as, like you use it as a playground, or, again, lot of resonance again coming from, similarity coming from Gita, like, how Krishna says that, yeah, I don't know, but basically just the fact that it can, it's either fun, like it's, if it's fun, it's Leela, if it's, a stress, it's Maya, like kind of a thing. But so yeah, very interesting.
Yes, it is quite quite a paradox. Somebody mentioned it here also. Yeah.
Yeah, Swati said. Yeah. So I think it's a good thing that you go last, right? Not much can be said after you have spoken. So yeah, I think, yeah, Ritu, yes.
Yeah, Reggie, one request. Whenever you talk, after every sentence, please give some pause. So that we can
What?
So that us earthly souls can absorb it fully, Reggie.
because
Okay.
it's beautiful, even before we start, I mean, understanding what you're saying, you again come up with something which is even more beautiful than what you've said before.
Okay. Okay. I thank you. I'll keep that in mind. I have no idea. I'm just saying. Okay. I'll be aware of that next time.
So anyone else who would want to share, comment, reflect on anything before we end the session? I have a very small thing that I would want to share, but before that, I would like to ask anyone here.
So personally, I feel like if we have to go back to our level and what like Shilpi was sharing about the suffering mind. So I feel that yes, again, it comes from I think uh, the different layers of mind. So if I have to relate, I feel it comes from my memory, or like my environment. So that would be part of chitta only. And if we talk about the combination, yes, like we said, chitta, manas again is my senses that act in the environment. So I have this storehouse of memory. Then there is there are these senses that are working, and also my intellect that is taking this. And so I think all my suffering is because of that. And uh, gradually, as I understand these different parts of my own mind, which again, see, when I'm talking of my about my memories, my and my senses, it's beyond me, it's in my environment, it's so I personally feel that these different layers of mind, and also this one layer which is purely intuitive also, it's all it gets its energy and its growth only by interacting with the environment. So uh, yeah, so if we have to talk of suffering mind, as in how I understand it, it does come from my chitta, but then as in how I increase these different layers and work on everything, I am able to, use this passive memory for my growth. That is my personal experience.
Yeah, Shweta, that's a very important point. Again, it's like, again, going to the example. Sorry, Josna ji, why don't you first? Please do. Okay. So, it's like you have something like, again, using the example of the knife, you can either use it for kind of cutting stuff, or you can use it to murder someone. So I have this tool, and how am I using it, and what are the things I'm basing it on? So if it's just, my past, is that a good enough data to actually just keep living my life on? I think I need to question that. And again, like say earlier on, people were sent to Gurukul, the kids were sent to Gurukul to gain so much, so much knowledge and different skill set and stuff. And the mind was predominantly used for that. But for what I am predominantly kind of just talking about where I'm going astray, because there would be good things as well. I'm using the mind to just get stuck in me and my stories, and that causes me suffering, right? Like you had so nicely said. So yes, that it is a tool, and but how am I using it to what end? Yes, Josna ji, please.
It got muted by mistake, unmuted
Okay.
by mistake.
Okay. Yeah, yes, yeah. So anyone else? Mayu, you have hardly spoken today except the mind thing. In case there's anything you want to talk about on the topic, please do.
Taru, I'm not in my usual place right now, so that's why my video is
Okay.
also off. Yeah.
Okay, okay, absolutely. So, I would just take 2-3 more minutes. And when I was kind of with this topic, the story of Sri Ramakrishna, and he had this intellectual discourse, Keshav Chandra Bose, no Sen, Keshav Chandra Sen. Like there's this discourse that they talk about, not discourse, like a conversation. So basically, Ramakrishna, he never claimed to be anyone. He never claimed that, I have knowledge and I know this and I don't know this. And but his love for Ma Kali was just like, he just loved and loved and loved. So there was this person, Keshav Chandra Sen, and he basically said that what you're basing your love on is not right. Like I want to come and I want to, have a dialogue session with you, that you're wrong, that what you're basing your love on is just the idol that you see, and you see Ma Kali, that's just, I don't know, hallucinations or whatever. Like I want to use my mind to have that thing with you. So I mean, Ramakrishna probably said, yeah, yes, come on, whatever, like I have nothing to say, but sure, welcome. So that guy came and he started, giving tark on tark, like, this is the reason and this is the thing, and probably you're using this faculty of mind and that thing. And Sri Ramakrishna just, he clapped that, wow, what logic, wow, the way you are speaking and how you are speaking. So the more intense that guy would get, the more amazed Sri Ramakrishna would get, and he had no retort. He just kept clapping, and he was like, Ma, are you listening to him? What grace is coming through him to me. So thank you for that. So, the beauty of that incident, it's like that already lost. Like there's nothing for me to actually protect. There's nothing for me to actually say that, yes, I know too, and I would want to justify myself or give reasonings for my love or my admiration for Ma. Nothing. It's just that, okay, he saw Ma as another child. He saw him as another child of Ma, and all he could feel towards him was just love and admiration. So they say that, that guy finally, when he realized what's happening, he also became one of the most, kind of uh, famous devotees of Sri Ramakrishna, because he said that where you are, my mind can't take me there. And that sounded, very beautiful to him. So I'm sure a lot of us would have already heard this one, but I was reminded of that. So I would share. And I know, although I said, I mean, this is a good point to end, but I did read a very small thing from Khalil Gibran. So I'll end the session with that if you just give me 1 more minute. It says that only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. Only when you have reached the mountain top, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then shall you truly dance. So just leaving us with this, that, again, this shows that what my mind think is the limit, but actually after then the true life starts. At least that was what I perceived. So yeah, I think that's it from me. If there's any comments, please unmute, share, and thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you,
And
Taru.
thank
A very, very meaningful session we've had today. Thank you.
I have
And
one quote.
you
Sorry.
too.
Yeah. No, carry on, Jyotsna ji. I just want to share something.
No, it was really, it was revealing, and one will tend to retrospect and regurgitate on it for quite a long time to come.
yeah, thank you so much, Jyotsna ji, for coming and sharing so much of yourself with us. Yeah. Yes, Shweta, please tell us the quote you wanted to share.
Yeah. So this is from Sri Aurobindo only. There is nothing mind can do that cannot be better done in the mind's immobility and thought-free stillness. When mind is still, then truth gets a chance to be heard in the purity of silence. So this was very beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Shweta. Thank you. So we'll end the session here. Thank you, guys. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. It's really nice being with you all. Good night.
Good night.